Okay, so welcome to the Node.js Technical Steering Committee meeting for February 15th, 2023. We're going to follow our standard approach of going through the issues tagged in the agenda. Before we do that, does anybody have any announcements they'd like to share?
Yeah, we should probably mention the security releases were delayed from yesterday to tomorrow. That's our current target.
Thanks. I'm just taking that note. Delayed.
The off-thread PR for the loaders API is finally ready for review. We got all the tests passing. So yeah, it's been like almost a year in the making, and this is the last one before the loaders API can be stable. I mean, we'll wait for it to any bugs to be reported, but there's no more expected changes before going for stable. So if anyone wants to take a look at that, that's it.
Okay, that's good news. Any other news that people want to share? Okay, in terms of the CPC and board meeting dates, board meeting updates, Matteo or Rich, do you have any things to share?
Next week, later this week, there is the board meeting. There is nothing on, so I will report after it, essentially, on the on this week. But everything is more or less proceeding as normal. Okay, so there is probably some bits to share in the private section, though. So it's if you can stick around, we can talk a little bit about it, but it's nothing serious and nothing important anyway. Like it's important stuff, but nothing that we need to act upon immediately, essentially. So yeah, that's it.
Okay, so yeah, so if everybody can stick around at the end, just as a heads up. Okay, anything on the CPC side?
No, I'm waiting and did a quick scan of the minutes and didn't say anything.
There is, we have finalized the process for asking for funding for projects. So there was, anyway, it's anyways progressing. So if there is a need for projects to have some specific, some funds for some activities, that's what, we need to follow to get those kind of things, that kind of money. There is an ongoing discussion on providing GitHub code spaces for projects. So that's part of the being currently discussed. And this was raised by Sean Larkin from Webpack. So this is probably something worthwhile mentioning right now.
Okay, thanks. Okay, then let's move on to the items we had in the agenda. The first one, which we agreed to move to the beginning, is the metadata proposal for docs, and we have Claudio here to sort of lead us through that proposal. So Claudio, I'll let you take that away.
Thank you, Michael. Hey all, I'm very excited to be talking here about this initiative from the Next 10 working group. Can you hear?
Yep, we can hear you.
Can you folks see and hear me well?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, well, I'm not sure how to actually put this in. Oh, slideshow. Okay, amazing. That's easy. Okay. Oh, for some reason the title disappeared. Anyways, well, okay. So this is basically a proposal from the Next 10 working group where we would like to do a numerous amount of changes on the current way how API docs are stored, formatted, classified, and also how their outputs are generated. Oh, there's a transition. I didn't know about that. Okay. And so what is this proposal about? Well, standardization of our API docs following the common MOR spec, separating the API metadata from the human readable content, like the description, the examples, and all the actual content, that adds on top of the metadata. Defining a specification of the API metadata that is easy to understand, extensible, and hackable, and the restructure of the directory tree and how content is split across files. Creation of a tooling processor that is modularized and highly hackable for parsing the docs into numerous kind of output formats like JSON, MDX, HTML.
And I think that's one of the key things, in that it will help with things like generation of the data that like the TypeScript teams needs to generate the types.
Exactly. So I'm going to on the point, but basically just to quickly summarize what are the key benefits that this proposal supposedly brings is, well, supposedly, remove contribution barrier and improve developer experience. Creation of an API schema that is easy to understand, extend, and that can be used by downstream packages such as TypeScript. Enable translation of metadata by using ICU compatible formatting, and a tooling that is easily hackable, extensible, and that outputs generation of a number of different formats. And basically, during the slides, I go over each one of those topics. So basically, the format that I had intended for this is just to go over quickly those topics and then have questions. But if anybody wants to propose a different format, like as I go through the topics to add comments. Yes, Matteo?
See, Matteo has his hand up.
Mm-hmm.
No, I have one. Oh, sorry. Sorry, I have one specific point that I want to talk about, and I see it mentioned a couple of times, also in this slide. Okay.
Okay.
I essentially disagree on having the docs translated at a fundamental level.
Gotcha.
Okay, I just wanted to put it more or less on record, and I would recommend, if the key goal is to have this translated, it's probably best not that to be the main goal. The fundamental reason, we don't have the resources to keep all the documentation in sync. And as somebody that it's a foreign language speaker, I find English is a second language for me. I find the translations to be horrible, okay, at best, on most software, to the point that, oh no, I don't even want to see this. So it's who they help people that don't speak a word of English, okay, and that we actually have a few cases where that might be worthwhile, but I would be very, very much skeptical in creating at having, minus a few key languages, okay, that we might need to support, and where we might even ask to some extent for some potential funding from the foundation for getting the initial lift off and on the translation side of things. But which, just to list them, might be Chinese, okay, that comes at the top of my head, based on the number of usage and a lot of other things like that. But apart from like very few cases, I wouldn't translate them. And it's like I wouldn't spawn 10 projects to translate in all possible language, or 20, 30, 100 something. I don't know how many language team we had at some point. So it's actually super hard to maintain. And so, yeah, anyway, this is the gist. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, no worries. I just want to be a little bit conscious of the time. So just to quickly answer, no, it's not a key benefit, a key goal to translate the content. But it's very interesting that with the metadata being separated and having, so for example, on the metadata, you also will have specific human readable content. Like, for example, if you have the history table, when something was added or why a change in a specific module was done, you want to maybe have a short description why it was done. Those are the little pieces that can be translated. The main idea here is that, well, having the key parts of the API that are actually, the strictly specification that goes around, the API specification to be translated can be a benefit, but I completely agree also that certain technicalities and terms can completely be lost through translations, and then also maintaining them in different languages can be hard. I know that more people will have comments on this, so I really hope we don't focus too much right now in internationalization and make this a debate about internationalization, if that's okay. So I can just go to the next slides. Nikita, is your points also about internationalization?
Yes, it is.
Would you mind? I'm sorry. Would you mind if I could just finish this slide? I know that this is like a very hot debate, and I will allow everybody to talk what they have, just because otherwise we will not be able on the time to go over everything, and then we will keep rushing everything. Is it fine for you?
Yes, it is. I just want to mention Electron, but okay.
Yeah. Okay. So removing contribution barriers and improving developer experience. So, well, it's a directory tree that follows a top-down structure, allows contributors to easily find the files they want to contribute to. So, for example, you have the crypto module, and instead of having basically all the classes and methods in just one big file, which can be hard for people to find if they want to update a specific part of that file, having, for example, specific files for each class or something that is more breakdown can help, developers to find what they need to update, in a more, let's say, reasonable manner. So Markdown files use only standardized common mark syntax, which is easy for contributors to understand. So we have this issue right now, which is we have a lot of custom syntax and a lot of tooling around that to make the syntax work. And there's no much documentation, and again, that's custom. So like only our tooling is the only tooling ever that can support it without having hundreds of thousands of errors at build time. So by following standardized common mark, we also lift a little bit of this churn that we have with different developers for understanding what this means, and it also allows more processors to be able to actually build our docs. Not to mention that adding custom syntax directly in Markdown, it's really hard to actually validate and int and parse. Markdown files contain only human readable text that can be translated. This is just a point. So for example, by separating the metadata from the content, if we ever translate content, translators do not need to worry about those things, yeah. Any comment so far? Okay. Creation of an API schema that is easy to understand. So the YAML schema that is proposed will use keys that are self-explanatory and fully documented using YAML primitives. YAML is a familiar formal language, for developers. It doesn't really use a complex syntax for what we're going to do. So also this will lift, some of the work that the tooling does. So it doesn't need to compute, complex ASTs or execute, complex regexes to be able to process the metadata because the metadata is completely already in a standard schema that is in a separate file. Yeah, and the schema is highly opinionated and enforces consistency. So, if you try to break from the standard, or linting and testing, CIs, you break. So this will, ensure that, developers and contributors, they stay consistent. Yeah, so the schema provides also vital components and information that in the future, one of the main goals of this is to allow, IDEs such as Visual Studio Code, and, downstream packages like a TypeScript to be, to use this metadata and generate, type definitions or IntelliSense or whoever that wants to consume this data can easily consume this data, And well, again, it possibilitates the translation of metadata by using IQ compatible formatting. This is just, another point that, by separating metadata and having specific files for message bags of the metadata, it really allows, translation to happen at a glance. And also by having, all the content of Markdown files, like I explained before, you can also translate it through platforms like Rodin. The final point is, a tooling that is easily hackable, extensible. So basically think something like Babel. I'm not sure if Babel is actually the right one here. Gulp, I think it was Gulp. So a tooling that follows like a pipe pattern, it processes the source and creates node trees that can be piped through generators. You have a built-in plugin system that allows you, to basically, after the initial processor processes the information, you have like a node tree and you can do whatever you want with that. So you can output as JSON, as HTML, and MDX. And basically, the tooling has a CLI that supports converting the old API format into the new one, and also the new format into the old one, right? Yeah. And then a quick TLDR of the directory tree. So what is inside the new, directories, so basically each directory has its navigation files, and we have a top level navigation file. So these files are in Markdown, and basically, they tell, hey, so here we have, I don't know, HTTP, crypto, etc. And these are entries. So like the top level entries. So, we can customize, the navigation as we want. Basically, the navigation entries can load other navigations, a subset. So it's, very easy to have manual control of the navigation, and to actually dictate what we want actually to show in the navigation. Both the metadata, the Markdown files and translation files, they follow, a kind of a pattern. So for example, you have the main, for them, you have the file name, and then you see that there's a pattern of like .metadata, .IHN, etc. So basically, that's how you associate and how the tooling will associate. Okay, so this metadata file belongs to this Markdown file. And ideally, for modules at least, we want to group classes to their modules, which will be directories. There's a demo that is available on this GitHub link, which I shared in the email yesterday. If you're just curious how the directory tree would kind of look like. Something happened here, I guess. Okay. Yeah. So before I go to how we make this happen, because I know that I'm kind of rushing a little bit over here. So far, does anybody has a question regarding those main points about how this new proposal works?
I see Matteo has his hand up.
Oh, I
Matteo?
just want to reiterate I seen the example that is linked in the link. I think that would be discussing that in detail might be way better if we can set up a different call just to discuss what that specific thing, or if there a repository or an issue where we can just provide some feedbacks. The fundamental, like I put down again my a minus one on having the strings split between multiple files with the translation logic. Doesn't work. Okay, it makes maintenance so much harder, and it actually is completely against the starting goal on increasing developer contribution. So it's not great. Okay, so just to be to list the that specific bit, and yeah, that's.
So I think there's already an issue, right, Claudio, that you could start to add comments and have some async discussion there. I think we could also set up like another follow-on meeting for people who want to dive into the details.
Tobias has his hand up too.
Yep.
Yes, exactly. There's an issue already that I also mentioned on the last slide, that you can also go over and comment on your opinions, but we can also do a separate call to also discuss the very technicalities. And to be fair and honest, I don't think it's something that we will decide in one go. I think we will have many iterations.
First of all, thanks for the bits. Like something that was very effective in the current way we do docs is that the definitions and all the things are connected in one place. And if we could maintain that, that would be significantly better. And not have, multiple back and forth, 3 files to do the same thing that we do with one. Okay, just so that it's all at the same time. Okay, like when I edit, I don't need to edit 3 different files that changes together. Okay, I just want to edit one file with all the metadata and metadata in there.
Tobias, you had your hand up as well.
Oh yeah, thank you. I've pretty much said this in the issue already. I kind of agree with Matteo that if the claimed goal is newcomer friendliness, then having them edit 3 different documentation files just to add one option to edit an example or explanation, to add it to the metadata, to add it to the history strings, which are for some reason Markdown and YAML and then a JSON file. So you kind of have to understand 3 different formats. But yeah, anyway, that I've pretty much said that in the issue already. I'm kind of wondering if I very much like the idea of formalizing the metadata, and we kind of already do that by extracting JSON from the API docs, even though in a much more crude way. I'm kind of wondering if the ultimate goal is to provide it to tools such as TypeScript. What is the upside of doing it in YAML instead of just writing TypeScript definitions for the options, for example?
Gotcha. I hear your concerns. So I would say that first, you wouldn't really be editing 3 files most of the times. One, because again, most of the times when you update, what I'm assuming, you need to add a new method, right? You want to update the existing method. You're going to only update the metadata file. You only need to update the markdown if you want to add a description about that or examples or etc. And I think it's easier to keep track because you have out the order data removed, like the metadata, which is also already in YAML. And YAML inside Markdown is not something really supported on, like, a lot of the API docs that we have, they do in different ways, in very janky ways. So yeah, I mean, I think one of the main goals here of this proposal is that we have kind of standardized and, let's say, clean way of maintaining the API docs. Also, with the metadata, definitely devote support and help downstream packages like TypeScript. But it would also, let's say, ease the process that is in our tooling. Like our tooling right now, it's pretty much unmaintainable if you need to update it because there's so much complexity in it that adding new things will get even harder. It's also that ensuring that, so sometimes you have 2 like spaces between the YAML or you have 2 different paragraphs. So like basically we need to add a lot of if cases, like extra logic on top of the tooling to handle all the possible scenarios. And that doesn't really guarantee that things work because like we use a lot of custom regexes that really need to match the string interpolation that happens there. Like there's a lot of jankiness. So I don't think that, I mean, again, that's my personal opinion, right? The editing 1 extra file, it's a burden, right? If what you're doing is changing a few lines. Again, yes. Any other question regarding the matter? Okay, I'm not saying that. I'm just want to make it really sure that that I'm not saying that I'm right and that anybody else is wrong, etc. I'm just trying to, really try to make sense of the other arguments and see, maybe what we can then, get from the other points to update this proposal to, create a better experience for everybody, because it's the ultimate goal is to, improve your experiences and how you can easily better, contribute to the API docs and allow more people to contribute to the API docs. And allow the API docs to be used better.
Yeah, I think it's probably good to note, like there's, you know, the concern, take it back for discussion in the proposal document. You know, I think if you can summarize afterwards, like, hey, here's the thing, here's the points that we discussed.
Mhm.
And, you know, we can kick off a discussion there and carry it on. This probably makes the most sense. And
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So basically the last part of this slide is basically, you know, how we would make this happen, which basically, you know, trying to address concerns of, you know, how this will be feasible and how this will not break what exists already. So basically, we would write initial tooling that allows the conversion from the old API format to the new one. And that basically tries to validate that the current API docs pass conversion, you know, basically adding is a test step on the CI. Basically, the tooling is responsible for generating, you know, all these new files and creating new directory structure, etc. The tooling will temporarily hold in a different repository, so we can, you know, through this phase, you know, fine tune it, update it, fix it, etc. So we don't need to make comments on Node.js, you know, Node, the core repository. During the trial phase, we basically just want to check if the conversion of the files is like really working, like ensuring compatibility, that the metadata generation is correct, that all the other files are correctly generated, you know, basically making amends to the existing tooling. And note also that all the files that are generated, they will just be discarded. Like it's just a CI step just to, you know, check things are passing, nothing's broken. Like both with ESLint and Prettier, and, you know, and checking if common mark, you know, linting rules and etc. are passing and etc. And then once we ensure that everything's working, basically we will update the tooling to do the backporting. So basically it does the opposite. So this is added again as a step on the CI. Basically immediately after the step where we generated the new folders, a new structure, a new metadata and whatever. So one way that we testify that, you know, backporting is working is that by generating to the new format and backporting exactly the output that was generated, and we have a no diff, that means that we achieved the goal, backporting is working, we can backport, you know, everything, you know, back to the old format if needed. Also, this is just a little PS of what we were discussing initially, but to only support backporting from up to the active LTS version, because before in Node 16, the API docs, a lot of files, they don't really follow most of the conventions that were put in place. So like a lot of, it would need to add even more, you know, strain on the tooling, conversion tooling, like more hacky regexes and etc. that, you know, would be, you know, just harder. Then the tooling is updated to support the actual pry process, adding an initial output generation of JSON for testing, you know, so we see that, you know, the tooling is actually working correctly in the sense of, you know, actually allowing you to generate the output formats. And once our generation is working correctly and we can ensure that all pieces of the tooling work, we're proceeding adding developer documentation, which basically explain how the tooling works, how to backport, how to generate, indeterminate formats, and etc., so that people can review, you know, their opinions about the overall state of the tooling. Then we proceed removing the tooling to Node.js node, because now it's stable and it can be part of the actual /tools folder. And finally, we run the tooling to do the initial conversion of the API docs and to be landed with the next major version of Node.js version that is at the time when the tooling is ready. Sounds easy, right? Yeah, and those are the resources. Basically, you know, the demo, the proposal, which is the issue where you can also, you know, add your concerns, as many are already doing. And then this is a tooling that I created for the website redesign initiative, just to approve a concept. So if you, for example, open nowadays node.js.dev/API, you basically will see that we have the API docs in the website redesign, basically because of this translation layer. And that is basically, you know, just an example, you know, a draft of how the tooling could work for conversion of the old format to the new one. Yeah.
Sorry, just to clarify, we will keep this documentation always HTML rendered as it is right now.
Yes, yes. So for the Wait, sorry. Okay, rephrase. Maybe I'm doing a wrong answer here.
Statically rendered. This needs to be HTML file on disk in the website.
Yes.
On the website, yes, yes. That's one of the
Like,
output
it's not-
formats if you want. It can be MDX, which then can be used by other processors, or JSON, or HTML.
But sorry. In the website, so it's a clear, important feature of Node.js, of our docs right now, that they are files on a disk, okay?
Yes,
and not
yes. If
MDX
you-
file.
Yes, if you're saying to have HTML format in the exact same way as we have node.js/API, then yes. We also want to support the
But
exact same
you're
template.
putting as an if. I am putting it, this needs to be a strong requirement. We should not require a server to run to browse our docs. Okay.
yes.
I'm putting it, it's not an if, okay? You're saying we might want to change it in the future, but we should be very static, spit out, uploaded in the folder together with the release, same as it is right now. They
May I
should
interject
not be
real quick?
moved to the new infrastructure.
Sorry, Matteo, I'm not actually questioning this. I'm
Okay,
saying yes.
perfect. Then it's fine. Then we are good. Sorry, I just wanted to clear.
So,
This doesn't change anything. So sorry, Rich, you had your hand up?
yeah, just real quick. When Claudio approached me about this sort of at the outset before he opened the issue to talk about it, one of the things, perhaps the only thing of value that I told him was that whatever happens, it absolutely needs to be the case that the API documents are still generated by doing a git checkout on the main repo and then running make doc. And it's my understanding that there's no intention for that to change. The documents will still be flat file. And
yes,
yeah,
but
and I think that's what you're getting at, Matteo, right?
Yes, pretty much. But a lot of the additional flexibility that this jet gives us is not really useful for that docs generation flow. Like the doc generation flow needs to be as it is right now, gets spitted out in a folder, we upload it together with our release, and that's it.
Right,
Okay?
right. And that was the other thing I said was that whatever happens, this cannot make things harder for releasers. That's the other thing. It just needs to just.
But
just
it's also a fact of accessibility and the fact that I can download them all without doing server-side rendering or a lot of other things. Okay, like
Yes,
it needs to be like concrete down there. So
yes, I'm not even sure from where we're getting server-side rendering. Like that there's nothing with server-side rendering.
It's written that one of the goals is to provide MDX as an output format. And
also as a format, so you can use by order if anybody wants to use them, to another thing, because in the Next.js, for example, migration, we use MDX and that would be useful for there. But we still need definitely to provide the raw HTML in the same way that it is done right now, both for release processes, etc.
And the HTML that's generated has to look exactly like it will look when it's on the website. That was the other thing, so that we change to the formatting. We see it in Node Core. We don't have to. There's not like some processing that happens on the website and that changes the look and feel.
Exactly. It will use the same templates, the same styles, etc.
Also, something that was not mentioned is the anchors. Hopefully, should be the same.
Sorry, the what?
So like the anchors to like sections within a document.
Oh yes. That's also The current, for example, tooling that I created, it also keeps. So, for example, if you pick any node.js.org/API something and just switch the .org to .dev, it will go to direct same link, same area. Actually, the heading IDs are broken on node.js.org/API, which is a problem. But just wanted to mention the heading IDs will be the same. Yes.
And if this all solves the problem with the scrolling to the wrong part of the document automatically, that'll be outstanding.
Sorry, I keep bringing this up, but Tobias says in the chat that MDX would be used by Node.js.org in Node.js reset to Next.js, I think, and it should not be the case.
I think, Matteo, what might alleviate your concern is that the HTML documentation would still be available as a pre-rendered static document, but for what is being rendered in your browser, if you go to node.js.org and don't use a local copy, you would see the rendered MDX file. I would assume it comes out to just about the same HTML minus menus and all that, but
Yeah.
I would actually don't do that. Big time, big no. Again, it should work the way it works now. It's a different website. It's not embedded in the other one. They are not connected. If one goes down, the other needs to stay up and all sorts of things. Okay, don't go into that. Like, that's a very tough realm of availability and bugs and everything, and you don't really want to go there from my point of view.
Yeah, I think that actually leads into the next issue. Like, I think the docs part is actually a little bit independent of that, in that the goal is to support multiple formats. HTML is the key format. You do make doc, it should look exactly the same. It should help us improve the, like, when it makes the types, the JSON. So it should help improve that. And then it may support other things like MDX as well, but like none of those mean we actually use those somewhere else. So I think for this discussion, it's probably worth, just saying, yeah, no, it's going to generate HTML just exactly like it did before. The other discussion might be under the other issue that was on the agenda, which was like the website migration to Vercel. But those, I think we really should keep completely separate. The docs, we can assume like it's going to make doc, it's going to give you the static HTML. There's no plans to change that. The main changes would be, and those are the ones that, like, we want, it's good to get all the feedback to say, like, they would have to be edited differently, right? So, and that's where we knew there was going to be lots of discussions and comment. And so, like, getting that discussion to say, what is it okay to change on the sort of generation side or not, so that we can get to that better, like, in my mind, the better JSON docs for TypeScript and everything is a key thing that you get out of this.
Yeah. I wanted, if you're allowed, to really clarify that when I mentioned, for example, JSON, HTML, MDX output, is just that the new tooling would support like a hackable plugin system where you can, create output formats in other way. But in no way we're discussing here about actually putting the MDX docs on the new website. Even the Next.js to Vercel migration does include that. Like the Next.js migration doesn't mean we're going to put docs in MDX and and add them to the main website. That's also not in question, even for the Vercel migration and also for the doc proposal. We're just saying with MDX, for example, we could easily integrate the docs to the Next.js version of the website, because MDX is, for example, what it supports, and also regular Markdown. So yeah, does it like make things a little bit more clear, Matteo? Like that we're not trying to, for example, address those things?
Yeah, no, it does. It's just that it's I don't agree, but that's my 2 cents. Okay, so I don't agree. Like, I think those should be as static as fundamentally docs should be as static as fundamentally possible. Never be server rendered. Just spit out there, and that's it. Okay, so it's all those. I am totally in agreement that we need better processing and output for other formats and stuff, but the Node.js experience on the website should not have any dynamic part related to docs. Otherwise, things will get, we will be on the hook for a lot more support requests when things don't work or go down that we have the resource for. So a static website, it's built, it's there. If there is a bug, we'll be fixing a new release. Okay. A dynamic website is just it's going to be a nightmare from my point of view, at least. Like, it's not, we need to do stuff and changes that we need to make the changes in a way that makes our tooling like less work and not more work. And these seems to be like doing processing, like mixing the two things will mean that I think we'll need to do more work in the future, which might be easier if there are more collaborators, but I am assuming that we are not getting new collaborators. And if we are, and if I am assuming that we are going to get less collaborators, as has been the trend, then I'm not. I think we should do something that reduces the workload, not increases the workload. And
Gotcha.
this is where that's my point of view of a lot of those things in this proposal. It's less workload, less work, not more work. And
Yep,
this
definitely.
is
Also, a side note that if we decide to not go to Verso, for example, if we want to keep everything static, MDX can also be completely static. Like, for example, the current PR to adopt Next.js is a completely static build.
Yeah,
for
yeah, no,
example.
but I'm not, sorry, these are two things separate. So one is on the docs. There was a lot of effort and description of, oh, we might want to use MDX, we want to use in the way the output should be on the HTML front, big time. That's the it seems that you have a lot of you want to do a lot of things with this kind of proposal with all the metadata and stuff, and some of those are known goals, or even a negative for the project to some extent from my point of view. So I'm just trying to, at least my point of view is not the point of view of everybody. I'm just listing my concerns. But overall, like, it's great to have more strict schema. It's great. It's good. I know that there is a problem. I agree with all the premises. Okay, I'm just some of the details are I think need to be a little bit fine tuning on that side. But yeah, no, that's good work.
I just want to make clear that I'm not trying to argue. It's just saying that this allows new possibilities if you ever want to go to those paths. And thank you for giving your opinions, Matteo. I really appreciate it. Yeah, cool. Regarding Beth's concern, so regarding backporting, so for example, the idea is that in the moment that, for example, we bring a patch, for example, to an older version of Node.js, is we can use the conversion tool to also patch the documentation file to go backported, for example, if needed. So sharing picking, as far as I understand, would not be a problem because it will be part of the backporting commit. But I might definitely not have full context here, as I never did a backporting for Node.js. So this may go.
Definitely, I think it comes down to, like, we'll probably need to backport the change far enough back that there aren't regular things that the releasers need to backport. And that's why kind of like at one point it says, like, we're not going to backport to the maintenance phase. And I think some initial discussion with Beth was, and maybe Richard's releaser was, like, maybe there aren't that many changes going into the maintenance phase, but it'll be an important sort of balance between, like, if you make any changes in terms of how we maintain it, like, either we stick with what we've got forever, or we're going to have to figure out what the right balance between, like, okay, we're going to have to make a big backport to several lines, and at some point cut it off and hope that there's not too many the backports that actually take place, or figure something out, or we just say we can never change anything ever, right? As would be the other side. So Richard has hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to say that particular point was discussed in one of the issues that's open for this, and several releases did chime in. So we don't know for definite how it's going to work, but it has been considered. And that bullet point about we'll concentrate on the active LTS and the maintenance, that was a sort of several releases did sort of agree that we could probably not worry too much about the maintenance LTS lines, that the amount of things that had doc changes that go back into the maintenance LTS things are probably contained enough, small enough that we could potentially deal with. You know, if something significant gets into a maintenance thing, it's usually a backport PR anyway. So if things need to be fixed up, they'd be fixed up in the PR. The shuffling of things between current and active LTS is one of the places where there's potential friction if people are expecting things to automatically flow from current to active. And that was one of the things we talked about, maybe getting, you know, if current changes like the doc structure, and this is a big if, that we would want active to change not so long afterwards, so that porting the changes between active and current would be cherry pickable rather than having to go through a separate backport PR. But that's all sort of theoretical, I guess, because we're talking ifs at the moment. But the main thing was that it was considered. So that particular case where people drop a PR into current, or sorry, they drop a PR into main, they expect it to be in current, and then they expect it to automatically be on a active LTS release if it's not Semver Major, for example. That would only automatically happen if we could cherry pick things from a release point of view. If the releases have to, if they cherry pick and find it doesn't land, the usual practice then is to ask the person with the PR to open a backport PR. And the question then is, if the docs were significantly different in structure, that would just mean that almost nothing would get cherry picked across and everything would be a manual backport to active LTS, for which there was a lot more activity in terms of much more commits are expected to flow between the two. So that had been discussed in the issue in the public, and I can't remember exactly which issue, but maybe we could drop that in the meeting minutes when those go up. And I encourage people to go there and continue the discussion there. But I think as far as the releases are concerned, at least we're in a reasonable kind of wait and we're in a reasonable position where we're sort of comfortable that we'd give it a go and see how it pans out, based on having something in the tooling that would allow us to do those conversions if needed, and a sort of understanding that if we do go with a docs restructure, that we would plan to then port that to active LTS.
Just clarifying also a little bit on that. So for example, if the backporting of the source code is a direct cherry pick within the file, well, you would need to have an extra commit, which is like updating the docs regardless, right? That would be like a separate commit. Hey, update the doc file with the backporting of the doc file, which is basically running the CLI of the conversion tooling and then just update the same content back then. To be fair, cherry picking also allows the content of the cherry pick commit to be updated, which will create in the end a different hash commit, which will reference the original hash commit. So you could do iterative cherry picking. Yeah, but I mean, I think that's, like you mentioned, something to see how it works. Well, when we want to actually try that, like make a mock process, like we could just simulate the backporting at some point and see how it goes.
Okay, we're very close to the end of the time, so I think we could spend a little bit more time, the rest of the time, the 5 minutes, to dive, maybe dip into the website migration to Vercel one, or is there something else that people think we should try and squeeze into that 5 minutes? Okay, if not, let's try and see how much we can get. I mean, into the website migration to Vercel. I'm just looking to see, or whoever put it on the agenda wants to chime in. Maybe it was even me. I did. I think this was certainly, I added it because it would be a significant change. Wanted to make sure that all of the TSC was aware of the discussion that was going on. And so, I think there's some discussion in terms of sort of the approach of what might be there in terms of like, some part, certainly keeping like downloads and so forth, something like that on the main website, but then moving the static portion, maybe not the static portions, but like the core website portions over to Vercel. I think that's all I want to say. I don't know if we don't have a lot of time, but if there's people with thoughts that want to share, what they're thinking on this topic, go for it.
I think just to recap a little bit, some of the iterations. At the beginning, I told Claudio to open the issue because it was described in the other PR as a done deal with a specific architecture, and this was not vehiculated to the rest of the TSC. So I asked for the big discussion. Also, I didn't agree on the architecture that was being proposed, which if you want to dig, was for having the current Nginx proxy to Vercel, which will not be, I think it will only worsen our latency and worsen a lot of other stuff on our end. So it was not a great, I don't think it would work very well. In the migration issue that was discussed, basically kind of we settled on using, I think, Cloudflare page rules to route between Vercel, half of it to Vercel, and the downloads and docs and all the other parts of the website on the other part of the domain to our old Nginx, essentially. In this way, we keep actually it clearly separates the two components and use Cloudflare for doing that, and I think it works. It would work relatively well from my point of view and provide a good user experience, at least on the migration. I think that's. I just wanted to recap on part of that discussion and why it was put there. One note to be had on the migration of the main website to Next. It's that the build time is going to increase from 30-40 seconds or something to a few minutes, I think, and which is a decrease essentially on our developer experience, essentially, for us maintaining, writing blog posts or adding more content there. So I don't know. I think this is kind of a recap of that migration.
Yeah, those were definitely perfect explanation of it. Yeah. Yeah, I honestly don't have anything else to add because you did an excellent job in explaining everything. Maybe just one caveat on the build time. It is when you want to have a full production build, but if you add start the development mode is like 10-20 seconds max to start everything, have everything built as it builds as you navigate the website, right? I think maybe one important thing that I really want to, because I didn't get that much more feedback besides of, Michael and the second Michael and you, as how the TSC as a whole feel about this, about, having Verso in the middle of this,
I think that's the key. One of the key things, like, are we happy to have the website hosted outside of our CI / infrastructure, right? Like today it's all hosted within. And so I think that's the thing we should really, as a TSC, think about and agree whether we want to do that or not. Richard, go ahead.
Yeah, so if I remember correctly, earlier in this meeting, Mike and Matteo said something about the website, like the downloads and the website being separate. Well, at the moment today, they're not. They're all on the same Nginx server. So if our Nginx servers go down, it takes down both the website and the downloads. They all go together. We do have some stuff in Cloudflare to sort of try and load balance, but we have seen people complain on the odd occasions the website's gone down, taking the downloads with it. We're not planning to move the downloads. Moving the website somewhere else. I mean, from a build point of view, if build doesn't have to worry about hosting the website, that's one less thing for build to worry about. It still has the question, who is actually then maintaining the Vercel admin and infrastructure, and that's maybe another discussion. But if someone wants to sort of raise the question, what does build think about this? Well, if build doesn't have to worry about the website anymore, build will be perfectly happy, but we do still need a website, so someone has to be running it. That's all I wanted to sort of bring up.
I'm going to have to drop off, but Matteo, I'll make you the meeting owner, and so once we're done.
I need to leave too, so yeah.
Just want to give 30-second maybe last comment is
then we'll close
one recurring issue that we have in the website Wiki, mostly when a new major version of Node.js drops, is that we have huge spikes, like Richard was saying, and the website just goes down. So we might maybe in the future consider, what can we do to make it more reliable? Put a cache somewhere else, like maybe a second server, like alternative CDN, whatever, to allow people to download, because right now everything goes to the server, and when the server goes down, well, it goes down. Yeah.
We
That's a different
Yeah,
topic.
I think that's a
We-
longer discussion. You know, I do have to either I need a volunteer for somebody to take over the meeting, or we're gonna have to close out.
We can close out. I think I need to leave anyway, so I can't keep I can keep this going. I need to jump on the other thing.
Okay, so let's close out, and that, like, I think that's an important thing, but we're not going to resolve it in 30 seconds or so. So thank you for everybody for taking the time to show up. Thank you, definitely, Claudio and Jean, for coming to talk about this initiative. And I know lots of work and lots of feedback. If people can continue to put their feedback into the issues, and, you know, hopefully we can work there to come out with something that everybody's reasonably happy with. Thanks. Bye.
Yeah, thank you everybody for having me here. Everybody stay safe.